Hello, universe. Welcome to Pickathon Podcast, episode 8. I'm your host, Zale Schoenborn, and in this podcast, we try to get into discovering things, people, falling in love with things all over again, and it's just like an adventure. We don't really know how it's going to end up, but we're excited, and today I'm really excited. One of my favorite all-time artists is joining us, Lee Fields. And wow, what an incredible history that we'll get into. If I try to summarize Lee Fields to people, I think about singing. And connection and truth. And, connection is maybe the best word because in a lot of ways, it starts with it's something we always think about when we curate this festival, where singing is kind of like a universal almost entry for us. It's really like, if I don't believe somebody, it's hard to get into the music. Every year we get together, it's always about singing. We're like, this is an incredible singer. And when we have had artists kind of come through that filter, it's one of the most predictive ways for us to know that somebody's going to be successful in their career. And Lee was somebody well known before we came to us, but we've had many artists that came as almost nobodies. And actually, one of the funny stories in the first year Pickathon when Lee came was in 2011. We had a band called Sunday Valley, and that band was led by somebody named Sturgill Simpson, who nobody had ever heard of. He was in a very obscure band. A friend of mine had told me he was playing bars in Lexington. You should have this band. It's great. Absolutely no followers. But the second you dropped the needle on that record, it was the voice of Sturgill that just reached through there, grabbed you, and just kind of brought, it's like, I was trying to say, it's that connection. It's like you get tingly. There's something there, there has to be a belief in what they're singing themselves. And then just the power to kind of bring that and that truth out to people. And, singing is that magic. It's really hard to have something that has that much power that really transcends time without putting together both the truth and the power. And wow, I will just say with that, it's probably a really good time to bring on one of the best singers I've ever heard, Lee Fields.
I'm gonna love you like I did before.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure being on your show.
Yeah, man. I think about Lee, your career. You were born 1950. You've been doing this for a while. Where were you?
My life.
Where were you born? Where were you born?
I was born in Greene County, North Carolina. That's about maybe 20 miles from Wilson.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Wilson when I was 10. And that's where I spent my childhood at.
Were you listening to music in what was kind of on the radio back then?
Well, back then it was like, to get soul music, you had to get soul music on the weekends. Or if you got soul music, it would have to be from Tennessee, which Tennessee was a long ways from where I was in North Carolina.
Yep.
So it came in with very, very static, a lot of static with it. But the music was so good back in those days, man, that through the static, you could feel it,
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. But it was a beautiful time.
And did you start playing music there, or when you moved? I think you moved when you were 17. When did you actually pick up an instrument?
I started a band. I was playing bass. My brother was playing guitar. Douglas Howard, he was on rhythm guitar. And Larry Cooper was on drums.
Wow.
We started with a pretend audience. So we was on the porch. The porch, to me, in my mind, was a big stage. Man,
Of course.
And so we rehearsing, but to me it was like tons of people there. I could see the people. Imaginary, of course.
Yeah.
But they was there applauding.
Were you singing then?
And
Was that like when you started singing too? Were you the singer?
this is when I first started. And then we started playing local clubs, and people started liking us.
In
And
North Carolina?
Yeah, and it just spread it. It just it never stopped. It never stopped. One place led to another.
Yeah, because you moved to New York when, how young were you? You were like,
17.
yeah, so you were already playing in clubs before you were 17.
I was playing in clubs, man, ever since I was about 14.
Wow.
Because I was a paper boy around 13. I didn't aspire to be a musician.
What did you want to be?
I was brought up around a lot of music, but what I aspired to be, I just wanted to be a businessman.
I get it.
Yeah, because at that time, people of color, they had very, very little. And when I say little, I mean very little.
Yeah.
And I always wonder why did we have so much less? So I was inspired, man, I just wanted to just do business because I saw all of the people of color that did have visible accumulations. They seemed like they were sort of like educated or very, very, very smart. And so I wanted to be a businessman.
I get it.
Yeah.
And was there anybody like in your neighborhood that inspired you that way? It was like, is there some specific person?
Well, I was in the neighborhood, but I didn't know the person that lived in the house. It was a very nice house that they lived in. As I used to walk from school and just marvel over their house and just said to myself, one day,
Yeah.
I pray that I have a house like this. But that's what inspired me.
What inspired you to move to New York?
Well, that was after the talent show. My friend dared me to, because he knew I was always be singing when I carried my papers.
Mm-hmm.
and we had talked about getting a band at the time, and we were just assembling. And they knew that the voice was, he thought that the voice that people would like. And they said, man, you should go up there and sing, man. And then I saw these girls, man, and it was one that I, at that time, was liking. She was there. I said, wow. Yeah, man, I'm going to sing, man. I'm going to sing, man. So I went on and I sang, and the band that was playing talked with me after the show and hired me to be their singer. And then that led to another gig, and that led to another, and it never stopped.
Wow.
It never stopped. It slowed down a lot in the 80s.
Yeah.
It slowed down a lot in the 80s. It slowed to a point where I would say, man, I think this thing is stopping,
What's that's because disco? Disco was the cause?
Yeah, because of disco, they were playing disco then. They didn't really need live bands, and then they had like the club was finding a better way, I guess, and opposed to paying 5 or 6 guys, they could pay one or 2 guys,
Yeah.
Anyway, it slowed down very, very, very slow in the 80s.
And I mean, but before that in New York, was that kind of where you started getting traction like that? There was.
Oh yeah, in the early 70s, late 60s. Oh man, we were burning New York up. It was all over the place.
I mean, that was an incredible time to be there too, right? Just incredible.
Yeah, man. I mean, there were so many people that were walking the street. Matter of fact, one night, a friend of mine invited me to see this guy over in the village. He was playing at some club and down in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Man, you got to see this guy, man. This is crazy." Well, I'm not gonna use his adjectives because it would be blink, 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 blink. But anyway, I see this cat, man. He's on his knees lighting up a guitar. I thought it was the craziest thing I ever seen in my life, man. He had some kind of fluid, like setting fire to his guitar and stuff. And the place was like a small place, but it was so packed. This is like in about 6 to 7.
Ooh, who was it?
It was Jimmy.
Of course, I didn't want to say it. It's real too. Like...
Yeah, it was Jimi Hendrix.
Oh man, and that was like one of the first things. Welcome to New York. Here's Jimi Hendrix in a small club. You didn't even know though. No one knew he was going to be like an international star. That was like common though, right? There was so much stuff going on like that then.
Yeah, they had groups out like the Chamber Brothers. What's the guy's name? He used to play with Small Paradise all the time. He had this song out called Bertha Butt. His name gonna pop in my mind in a second. But he had this song out called Bertha Butt. It was a big record. This when I was like gigging. I wasn't the lead singer, but I was put in the band for whatever purpose Gene Red had in mind. But I was singing with a group then called Cool in the Game. That was before their hits.
I've heard them.
That was before their hits. I was singing with them for probably about maybe 8 months. Their manager had plans with some other cat man to do a big record on me. So he thought it would be a good idea, put me in on their gigs. And me and Cool became very good friends.
I mean, what an incredible time, right? What an incredible band that like you don't even know, right? They get it. Looking back, you can just say, oh yeah, that you were part of that.
Yeah. And then when that deal didn't go through, I stopped having ties with the band. I felt like it was something that I did.
I mean, was that before you recorded your first single in like 1969? Was it like
Yeah, this was before.
Okay.
Before I recorded that.
Tell Her I Love Her, right? That was your first single?
Right along that time, I started to record that song.
Ah.
Right along that time. Because, like a lot of people was approaching me to work with them and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I recorded that song right along that time. The record kind of took off in the southern areas. So I started performing in the South and then around New York.
When I listen to that era of the sound, like there's definitely a little bit more like James Brown in that kind of like.
Well, James Brown was the guy. At the time, every music, regardless who the artist was, they might not vocally had it, but even you could hear on the drums, you could hear some James Brown effect on everybody. Because he had an effect on everybody. He was one of them cats, man. He came along, man. I've seen the best of them out there,
Yeah.
And I would say out of all of the superstars, when James Brown was in his heyday, he was in a place, not saying greater or anything, but he was in a place where none of those cats were. All of a sudden, he was just there.
He just transformed, just like anybody around him.
All of a sudden, man, all of a sudden, hey, man, that's James. One day, people said, hey, man, I haven't heard about this guy, man. Who's that guy they call, what's his name? And all of a sudden, a few days later, they was, man, this is James, man. What you talking about?
And he had a big influence on you too, right? Like, I mean, even at one point, you even had a nickname, right? Little JB, was that right?
Yeah, I did. I think anybody, even Michael at the time, when he came along, the first thing he was doing was some James Brown.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
man, because James had that kind of effect on everybody. And I think Prince had a little James with him too.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he had a little James with him too. So everybody, man, was like, cause he was the guy in his heyday. He was the guy.
Was there connections between the bands and James's band? Like, was there any did you guys know some of them at the time?
Well, some of the people that I knew played with him.
Yeah. Like
his drummer Sam Lathan.
Oh, incredible.
Played with him and Maceo
Park.
Which I knew Maceo from Sam Lathan. That's because when they used to come home off the road, they used to jam with us.
That is a tight band right there.
That was before I went to New York.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, this was before I went to New York. You see, like, before I went to New York, I was with a band out of Goldsboro, North Carolina, and Maceo and his brother Melvin used to come over sometime and jam.
Incredible.
Everybody, man.
Oh, man.
And then one time we were jamming over in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and I'm like maybe 14 years old. And they calling this guy on. They said, ladies and gentlemen, we was at this little juke joint. We have special guests in the house tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the stage Thelonious Monk.
Oh my God.
But at the time, man, I was so into James, and it was a whole nother thing, like pulsating, a whole new thing. You know, the new Motown and James and everything was popping out.
That's awesome. So, yeah, it's incredible.
So Thelonious Monk at the time, I mean, I knew he was I've heard of him like he was a jazz player or something, but but at the time, just like the kids will tell every generation, oh man, that's not that ain't what we do, that ain't what we do. And at the time, the jazz thing was kind of slipping.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, jazz will always be there for people that really truly enjoy jazz, which I'm a jazz lover, and will always be there. But I'm talking about as far as hitting the pulse of the mainstream.
That's 60s, 70s, yeah.
Yeah. So jazz was like, jazz was really hot.
Yeah.
At the time, because they call all the people that like jazz, man, the cool people. They were cool. And if you didn't like jazz, man, you was square.
So I know those all of those stories, like where you're interacting with like people that think, looking back on your time when you're 60s and 70s and, your whole life, you're meeting in all these people that are just incredible, right? They're just, and they're kind of legends. And it's weird to think that you were just hanging out, right? Just playing.
Yeah. I mean, like the one that really, really intrigued me, man, was this guitar player, Lil Milton.
Oh yeah.
Lil Milton really, he was an intriguing fellow.
Wow. What was intriguing about him?
He just had a way of saying things that make you really, really think. When you be looking at him, you man, what is this guy, man? What make this guy tick talking like this? Hey man, he must have been around a long time.
Oh yeah.
He touching a whole lot of sensitive things here. And I'm trying to keep my composure and stuff. And he just talking. He had a way with his words, and it seemed like, and he knew it, man. Because first of all, when people are talking and I'm listening, I try to be a good listener because the benefit of a conversation is gaining something.
Absolutely.
So I was intrigued by Lil Milton, man, because he was like. It just seemed like, man, he had everybody figured. He had everybody figured out, man.
Yeah.
According to the way he was analyzing my situation, excuse me, but he had to figure it out. But anyway, he was an amazing guy. Amazing guy.
When were you hanging out or being around him? What years were those?
About 90. I would say I was on what they call it, I was on the Southern Soul circuit.
And so, like, just in the chronological part of this, you were in North Carolina hanging out with Thelonious Monk at different points.
I was a kid then.
Yeah, I know you were a kid, but you were like still in North Carolina up till 67. You moved to New York, and then
I moved to New York. And then when I was on the Southern Soul circuit in the 90s, I was doing a lot of gigs. Like in the heart of the South, like Mississippi and Arkansas and North Carolina and Tennessee,
which was kind of like the big revival, right? So like the 80s were this kind of like it dipped because disco or whatever, like the original, like kind of came along and just kind of sucked the energy out. And yeah. I mean, did you actually go get a job? Did I read that like you went like changed it up and?
No, what I did, I had to do a lot of deep thinking because everything changed up on me.
Yeah, it's kind of a wild thing to happen. It's just going strong.
So what I did, I became an avid reader.
Wow.
Everything that I put so much confidence in began to crumble.
Yeah.
Because everything changed. The music that people was gravitating to.
Yep.
Everything changed.
Yeah.
So at that time, I became unsure footed.
Yeah, I can totally imagine.
I was like everything was like, man, what is this built on? This ground is constantly moving.
It's like pop culture back then was kind of like pretty all encompassing, like
Yeah,
all of the smaller scenes that kind of exist today at the same time had a harder time. There's no internet. Like it's radio or nothing, right? You're like, what's going
yeah.
on?
Breaking through that was very difficult because you everybody got their crew.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody got their I'm on this boat here. I got all of the hanger-ons that I can help.
Yep.
So it was like you going in there, man, with a record manager just like you and 50,000 other jokers. Because every day is 5 or 10 cars coming up to the same radio station.
Yep.
To be frank with you, there was no clear way.
The gatekeepers were too strong. It was just too,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just like you were either making money for somebody or you weren't. And
Yeah.
when those tastes changed, it was like, sorry, we don't have space, and I just can imagine it was a lot harder. I mean, that lasted through the 80s, but it like that second big wave came back, as you were saying, you was like in the 90s, right? It started to get better.
The 80s really prepared me for what was to come after that.
In what way?
The 80s to me was like reassembling myself. You ever heard the old saying that the system will chew you up?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't roll with it, it will chew you up.
Oh, yeah.
So in the 80s, man, I was at a point where for the first time in my life, doubt began to set in.
And that's hard.
Yeah, I tell you, if a person starts doubting, I think a man can win as long as he want to win if he doesn't doubt. And how do you get around doubting?
Mm-hmm.
You have to cushion it with logic.
I love it.
Everything is a system,
Mm-hmm.
and everything includes everything in the system. So it made me start thinking different. It made me start looking at all kinds of music. It made me start looking at paying attention to every artist that I would see appearing on television or in the clubs. So the 80s were like an awakening to find who I am.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a duplication of anybody.
I get it.
But that being said, how do a person such a close resemblance become when people see that person, they say, hey man, this guy. You don't hear no mentioning of the person that was such a great influence, because the hardest thing in the world a person can do, I think, as far as musically, is when it's working against the odds. In order for a person to see any kind of possibility of any kind of success, you got to look at the odds and everything as being logical. Everything is logical. From Einstein theory of relativity, energy to mass time, the velocity of light squared. But all of these, everything got to become logical, man. It's got to be falling right in place. And I don't consider myself a great singer. I consider myself as a person that follow the emotion. I follow the emotion. I try to trail that emotion. I want to be right when a person go like, oh, that's where I want to touch it. When you go, oh man, that's where
that connection, right? It's like
that connection. So
that's it.
That being said, so it's been fun, man, because it's fun every night. Because I become the audience. I be out there, man, with them, man, having a damn good time, bro.
I mean, it's incredible.
When they laugh, when they be having a good time, I laugh too.
And I don't know if you remember, so like just kind of going up to where you came to Pickathon 2011, but a lot happened. Yeah. A lot happened in the 90s and 2000s. You just kind of went through Ace Records and Desco Records, where you were Sharon Jones. You actually brought Sharon Jones into a recording, I heard. Yeah. Like nobody knew who she was.
Yeah.
And that ended up being split into Soulfire and Daptone Records, right? With Gabriel Roth and then Leon Michaels, who did Soul, right? Soulfire. Who's L. Michaels Affair, which is some great music history all by itself. Like that whole section of your life going through that was incredible.
Yeah.
In this 90s, tell me how you met Sharon Jones and brought her to essentially her Daptones world career.
Well, what happened was when I met
Gabriel Roth, right?
Yeah, Gabriel Roth. He and Philip had found Sharon for background singer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how she came in. She came in as the background singer. Man, she was such a wonderful person.
She was.
Yes, she was, man.
Her life force.
Her and Charles Bradley, man. I mean, they're just like my own flesh and blood.
Oh, yeah.
That's how much I love both of them.
They followed that emotion too. That was like what you always thought about them.
Yeah, man. And it's just like a part of myself died when they died. It just seemed like everything happened so quick. This just happened so quick. But we had those times. One thing about it, we had those times.
Mm-hmm.
Can't take that away. What Sharon, Charles, and myself, what we had, man, was like something that was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that Charles got his day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that Sharon got her day.
We never got Sharon to Pickathon, but we had Charles in 2017. It was right before he passed away.
Yeah. Man, he was something else, man. One of the nicest people that you're ever gonna meet.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Yes, he was. And I guess you can say he still is, because I think when we die, that's not the end.
Yeah. No, he was another one of those people that followed that emotion,
Yeah. And Charles had a lot of emotion.
It was actually a big moment for Pickathon was in 2011. You were one of the first legends in the soul world for us. And I have a really specific remembrance of, I was also kind of into a band that was called Future Islands. And I think in 2010, you guys had played a show in Brooklyn some point.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember Sam Herring, but he was a super fan of yours.
Yes, your name sounds very, very familiar.
He was in a band called Future Islands that turned in where they were minorly popular at the time, but they turned into a stadium band. They became a huge band. And he was covering a song of yours because he heard you sing in Brooklyn. And you guys actually met. He was we were at the Galaxy Barn and just fanning out, watching you sing there. And it was for me, it was just this incredible kind of connection between both where we were from Pickathon. That 2011 was a really big year for us. We had Mavis Staples and Bill Callahan, and it was just such a great year. And man, what's wild for me is that since then, you've only gotten better. There's following, that sense of connection. And, some people kind of start to go into a victory lap. I'm kind of done. I'm just going to play my old hits. Right. But I look at your new record, Sentimental Fool, as one of the greatest. It was one of my favorite records last year. And I don't know if it's your favorite, but it's my favorite record you ever recorded. And
thank you.
There's so much just soul and depth in that, and your voice in that recording. It's just absolutely mind blowing to me. How many times I just stop and think, I get the chills. You're bringing me to those points. Cause now that I know you, now that I know about you, that's what you wanted to do. You're having that effect. You're there.
I like to be that emotion, man. I like to try to be as close as I can to that feeling. The feeling. To where you can just feel what I'm saying,
Oh yeah.
And I'm really having a great time meeting so many young talented people.
Mm-hmm.
And life is so rewarding.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's a good year for you. You also had essentially a Super Bowl, a Super Bowl song. I remember I was just watching the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden, here comes Forever off your thing.
And you know what? amazing about that?
Yeah.
If I turn the TV on so long, they still playing the commercial all over the place.
Yeah. And yeah, I had that was like, right. We didn't announce the lineup, but we had been talking and you guys were coming, unofficially,
Yeah.
and there was just so much chatter back and forth. And we were just like kind of geeking out on the fact that was like a pop culture moment. I think it was like one of the more successful commercials of that whole Super Bowl was your song.
Oh, well, thank you.
And yeah, I go back, I was like, for me this year, and thinking of singing, and just I love how you explain it, like you're trying to follow that emotion. I never really heard of it that way, but that brings me back to that same idea of connection. And I'm just thinking of you almost 4 decades solid, coming up on 5.
Yeah.
And you're at the peak. I don't know of another soul singer from your generation that is still as productive or is just like at top of their game. And I've been thinking about that, having that debate.
What it is for me, I think, because I know to be relevant as things congruently changes,
Mm-hmm.
I have to change. I have to find everything is changing. So I have to find out, okay, how can I change for the best?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? What can I do to make still, I might can't run as fast, might not have maybe the energy that I once had.
Mm-hmm.
But when I had all of that, there was no place to put all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out only thing I need is the things that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I want to be just as energized, but do it in a way where it has to be thought about to be truly felt.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was truly felt, it might be too raw. It might be too raw.
Mm-hmm.
If it was truly felt like out of the, like belting it out without thinking of all different kinds of forms, which it took all of those years to see how many. I mean, there's so many forms that they can never be counted.
Yeah.
And so there's so many ways to attack a melodic structure, and it has to be done, I think, in the way that we communicate, in a way that we truly communicate. Person wouldn't say, "Baby, I love you." They wouldn't say that. They got to say it like they mean it.
Yeah.
Got to say it like they mean it. So that's what I try to incorporate into the song.
And just like, can you explain, how are you still hungry? How is this still fun for you? Like, what is it? What is it?
What make it fun?
Yeah. What makes you want to connect? What is that?
I tell you, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. I feel like I'm supposed to just connect and to get more accessible and be that vibe that the people are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Be that vibe.
And connect.
Yeah. Because it's all about, man, enjoying the limited time that we have here in this dimension called Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say this. I truly believe the things that we see and touch are things that were designed to be there based upon this possibility. See, since there was nothing created as far as material, what we see and touch are a part of this dimension, because everything is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
This is just one of the possibilities. And the possibilities are endless. It's like Pythagoras said, he believed the universe is built on, it's a numerical process. He believed that, it's all about numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And I share that belief.
Mm-hmm.
I share that belief. But the most important number is the zero. The reason why the zero is the most important number is because the zero is the alpha and the omega. Because basically in all directions, all parameters of the zero are negative ones and positive ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about the whole spectrum
Yep.
of this atom or particle that has not been discovered as of yet, whatever that particle might be called. I feel very much that the zero is very important because the zero is what keeps things stable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the changing in the Roman numerical system, everything changes with the zero.
Yep.
By adding the zero.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and basically, when you think about it, the atom functions the same way.
And how does that come into your music? Like, what is that you're feeling and thinking? Like, how does that come into like your world?
Because I want all forms in the music, all forms. You see, like even sound. We put it like this: sound waves.
Mm-hmm.
People got sound waves like they vibrate, but those waves themselves has to be comprised of something other than moving the air. I mean, sound itself has to be a substance. I mean, it has to be some sort of particle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe we just haven't discovered the equipment yet to determine the particles of vision. I know, you know, if release of photons, if that is light, then light has to be everything. I think everything is settled light because light itself is energy. Like Einstein said, matter is energy.
Yep. The wave equations. I went to school for that stuff.
Yeah.
And man, well, Lee, what can I say? I am inspired. I think people can take a lot away of like how you kind of view this kind of connection to everything, not just a
cosmic.
Yeah. And that's just like a level of depth. You're going to have to start a singing program there. You're going to have to start a YouTube channel, teach singers how to connect, do some cosmic singing. Cause I think that is the next level there. And when I hear you, like, there's just nobody like it. And I can really just be really honest and say, I'm so glad you're coming this year. I'm so glad you're still inspired to put this music out. And we're really looking forward to you. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being such a great guest here on this episode and giving us your secret.
I appreciate you having me on your show. I really do.
Yeah, Lee, it's going to be a great year, and we're going to be really excited. And man, just big excitement. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, this has been End of Pickathon episode 8, and I really thank everyone for checking in and being here with me and Lee talking about the universe and how that relates to singing. And wow, didn't really expect that, but it's pretty cool. And we will see everyone next week, episode 9. Thanks, Lee. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
This podcast is produced by Zale Schoenborn, Tanner McCullough, and Evan Throckmorton. Our artwork is by Travis Bone, and additional support by Ryan Stiles. The music you heard in this episode was by our guest of honor, Lee Fields. The songs included were Tell Her I Love Her, Stone Angel, and the one we're swinging with right now, Forever. A big thanks to the whole Pickathon family. And like Zale said, we'll catch you all next week.
So many songs have said these same things before, but this one, darling, is for you and me. So if it's all right with you, I'm gonna sing it once more.